I mean, there are 2-3 reasons, right? Accessibility is one, right? Like, for instance, let me just not related to startup for that matter, but my dad has been into financing for 6-7 decades now. So we do car financing and land financing for that matter, right? Okay. And my dad, being a Marwadi, does financing at 24% for that matter, right? So why is someone taking from 24% from you when there are other platforms? I mean, banks who give it, right? But then point then comes, right? Bank with all the kind of documentation, etc., etc. And the entire experience in itself is so dismal to people that they are happy to pay something, get access to things faster, and then do it. And like, for instance, my dad, I can give you an example, like a vehicle which he was financing, which was 5 lakhs. He gave him a loan of 1 lakh. Now his cover is 4x, 5x on top of it, right? So it's a no-brainer, but still people come to such platforms. But what these platforms are trying to create is nothing, and what banks are trying to do is what this fintech is, right? What is neobank today is a similar concept, right? It's nothing, a great UI UX on a bank product. End of the day, it's a bank only which is doing the entire transaction.
Yeah.
As traditional with their approach, with rigid as a system they are, with the kind of bureaucracy to get things done, etc. I think platforms being nimble, being agile, gives that ability to focus only on one thing, right? So I remember in one of these conversations when Narayan Murthy brought out, right? Like they asked him, who's your competition, right? And is Wipro your competition, or Cognizant your competition, or TCS your biggest competitor? He says, my biggest competitor is this guy sitting in Koramangala on one product. So my banking software, he's breaking it down into smaller aspects and focuses only on one, and he's mastering that art, which eventually he'll grow big, right? Like BharatPe is one classic example on how from one aspect they're scaling up to what they are at the same time. So platforms like ours gives faster accessibility. The experience is fantastic. It's easier for them to approach to them, and multiple, and more importantly, I think getting access to these opportunities, like what Nikhil is doing today. Honestly, I don't know if anybody used to do this before. What Nikhil does, because if there were banks who were ready to do it, or lending institutions are doing, would not do less than 21-30% in terms of return. What Abhishek is also trying to do is a similar thing, right? Like for institutions, giving them faster access to capital, the time value of money is what TREDx is at the end of the day, right? Like come in faster, and end of the day, they take care of all the security also at the same time, right? So that is the game changer in on all angles.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, Sudarshan.
No. Please go ahead, Abhishek.
So just absolutely what Sudarshan said. It is about, if we draw a chart, on one hand, we draw the MSMEs coming to a fintech platform, and these MSMEs going to a bank or FI. The kind of time taken for them to have access to that kind of capital. And these are MSMEs, these are growing organizations. They need it, like they needed it yesterday.
Yeah.
Not 10 days later.
Yeah.
That tact is the most important thing. Of course, you keep everything intact, you keep your due diligence, blah, 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 everything, obviously the right spot. But that tact becomes the most important thing. So when that tact comes in, MSME or a growing organization is absolutely willing to shell out that extra bit of bips to compensate. That's fine.
I can just add, because there may be one different use case for GRIP where we have seen is that there are certain categories of physical assets which the banks and NBFC have not yet got comfortable with from looking at, right? Because technology is evolving so quickly, and I think electric vehicles, for example, is a great case in point. There is still very limited traditional financing available for a sector that all of us are seeing in front of our eyes just expand, right? But yet the traditional sector is not available. And my sense is that whether it is by nature of product, by nature of business model, by the type of company, by the type of data required to be analyzed, there is always going to be a differentiator that nimble platforms using technology will be able to stay ahead of the curve.
Sure.
It may be electric vehicles for us today. A decade down the line, it may be something else, right? Whatever is frontier tech at that point of time. For Abhishek today, it may be MSMEs. Tomorrow, it may be even smaller companies, because their ability to process data points will be far superior than anyone else. So I think that's the additional place or play for platforms like us, which obviously give investors higher returns and at a very different profile of risk.